Hi everybody and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. This post is from the subreddit amitheasshole and it's by user JustThinking9909. Am I the a-hole for refusing to pay for my in-laws to come on vacation with me? I have been with my partner for 4 years. He has 2 kids with his ex-wife. I have no kids and don't plan to. Our household income is okay. He earns the majority of it. He earns 65% of the total. The last 4 years, he has insisted that we pay 50-50 into household bills despite the fact that he earns far more than what I earn and his kids stay with us regularly. I pay half the rent, bills, and grocery, which is expensive for someone on my salary. He wants to buy a house near his ex-wife so he can be closer to his kids. So he says it's important that I pick up 50% of the costs now so that allows him to save more of his money for our future. The money he isn't paying into bills goes straight into his own savings account, not a joint one. He does not really acknowledge he has underpaid the bills the last 4 years. I've calculated he's underpaid between £16,000 to £19,000. When he first moved in, without his kids, I picked up all the bills. I paid out over £8,000 in rent and bills. He paid around £1,100 towards food. Now to the matter at hand. Not long ago, he asked if I wanted to go away for the following weekend. I said, sure, and we talked about where we could go. He then went to visit his parents, and later that evening, he messaged me an Airbnb link for a lodge by the beach to visit that weekend. He asked if his family could come, and he said he'd pay more than 50% if I agreed to them coming. I don't have any family, plus his mom and dad have beat cancer recently. I said yes to his folks and grown-up brother coming and booked and paid for the Airbnb. A few days ago, he wanted to settle the vacation bill and has offered to pay 60% of the total. I've kicked off stating the obvious. There were 7 people in that lodge and 6 of them were his family. My portion of that bill is 15%. Am I wrong? No, OP, of course you're not wrong, but that's like the minor thing in this whole story. It sounds like this relationship is not financially fair at all. The setup is basically that he's funneling money from you paying so that he can save it in his own account. If it was for your future, why isn't that money in a joint account? It should be both of your money. You're covering more than he is right now. So it's basically taking money out of your account to put into his account. This whole holiday thing is just another scam, and it's the cherry on top of a whole relationship scam here, OP. So if you think this relationship is worth sticking through, then you need to make some hard changes. First of all, fair split. Then you need to call him out on the vacation thing, and he needs to cover 85% of it. And you need to set it straight for the future. If he's saving for a future house that will be in both of your names, then that money needs to be in a joint account. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's check out the community comments. TDLMTH says, not the a-hole. I brought 2 kids into my present and final marriage, and we added a 3rd. I make more than my wife, but once my support obligations are factored in, my wife and I make roughly the same. But guess what? After a year or so of tracking household versus my kids' specific expenses, clothing, furniture for their rooms, etc., we determined that my share of total expenses averaged out to roughly 60%, and that's the share I pay every month. Yes, your share is 15%. If you're feeling generous, tell him you'll go as high as 25% as a gift to his family, not to him, but 40 is out of line. Missing from your post, though, is the question of how much his grown-up brother is paying. I guess I would say that grown-up brother is paying some that you're not aware of, bringing your partner's share down even further. And OP responds, hi, thank you for commenting. I really wanted to hear from someone who had kids going into a relationship to understand what the arrangement should be. I know it can be quite complicated, but the current arrangement we have doesn't feel right. Even if there's a possibility of being a homeowner later on down the line. The Airbnb thing may sound small, but it feels like the straw that broke the camel's back. His family, including his brother, have paid nothing. His brother is unemployed and his parents are retired. I also learned that the location of the holiday was a trip down memory lane for them. Apparently, they'd visited that seaside town as kids. I hadn't even heard of the place until my partner messaged me the Airbnb link. I need to be clear though, I've tried not to mention his kids too much as I feel really conflicted on what I'm complaining about. I love them dearly and I'm fiercely protective of them despite having no biological connection with them. Walking away from the relationship will cause those children a great deal of upset, so kicking their dad out isn't really an option. Talking with him doesn't really help either, as he gets angry and upset that he's working a difficult job that pays exceptionally well just so we can afford a house. I feel a bit stuck at the minute with no one to turn to. Both his parents are recovering from cancer treatment, so I can't dump this on them either. I don't have family of my own, and if I speak to friends, I feel like I'll be humiliating him. Also, on a selfish note, I know that I'll be judged by my friends for putting up with his BS too. I'm trying to be as honest as possible here. Memphis Dreams says, you realize he's not going to put your name on that house, right? If that house was really for your future, he would set up a savings account with both of your names on it. He's just using you to pay enough bills that he can save up for a house and, more than likely, dump you once he's purchased the house. Put your foot down, tell him the money distribution is unfair and you will only pay 35% of the bills, but offer to put that 15% you are saving towards a house in a mutual savings account and you want your name on the deed as 35% owner. Insist on getting a lawyer and having an agreement drafted. If he refuses, then you have your answer. He's just using you. Also, don't let him gaslight you or persuade you into seeing his side of things. Telling this isn't anything personal, even if it is. It's just protecting yourself and your future. Again, if he declines or argues, dump him and move on. And Squats and Avocados says, not the a-hole. Why are you with this guy? It sounds like you are funding so much of his life and not getting anything out of this relationship other than being so financially weakened, it would be hard for you to leave. Additional information from OP's comments. I must confess that I, to an extent, may have a pattern of dating men like him. I was renting the house we live in now on my own before I met him and he moved in. It's a 3-bedroom property in a safe area and I've worked from home for years, which is why I needed the extra space for an office. I could afford my bills before I met him, but I don't think I should be paying his way through. He has known for a very long time that I don't agree with this arrangement, but he insists it's the right thing to do so I can get on the property ladder. Still, I don't have any savings to buy a house. When we first met, his friends told me that he was a really generous guy, so I thought I'd be financially safe with him. I never imagined he'd have me paying for his family holidays as well as paying as much as I do for everything else. I didn't think things would turn out like this, as he sold himself as a reasonable guy. And no, he does not make up for it in housework. According to him, it's because he works much harder than I do. He works 37 hours a week over 4 days, and I work 37 hours over 5 days, which means his days are longer. Now, the way things work is that I pay for everything and he reimburses me 50%. But he doesn't pay me on time. He tends to pay when it's convenient for him. Normally after he gets paid at the end of the month, as opposed to when the bills leave my account, which is the beginning of the month. I've asked him to pay within the first week of every month, but he flat out refuses. He doesn't give me a valid reason as to why he pays late. As for the holiday, I paid for it up front. He said he would pay me back, but then offered me 60%. It was a non-refundable booking, so that money is gone. He hasn't paid me for anything for the holiday so far because I've said 60% is unfair. Now, I don't think he's pissing away the money he claims to save. There is nothing he's purchased recently that makes me think of that. He's actually thinking of buying a new car soon, but wants to get a loan for it. He asked me how much I'd like to contribute towards the new car, and I said I wouldn't. I have a car, but it's currently off the road because I couldn't afford to get it fixed up. So I admit, when he talked about getting himself a shiny new car and have me contribute towards the cost, it made me very angry. Currently, he drives us everywhere and he considers this an adequate contribution to the household. It wasn't like this when we started dating, not at all. He didn't move in straight away, so we had a good time getting to know each other. He seemed to be a reasonable bloke with career aspirations. I was happy for him when he got the promotion for the job where he's earning significantly more than me. Not because it was good news for me, but genuinely happy for him and his goals. I never dreamed he'd be weakening me financially to meet his own goals. I don't consider myself a greedy person, but this arrangement he's insisting we stick to just doesn't seem okay. I'm putting a heck of a lot of trust in him to do the right thing, but I don't think he fully appreciates the damage that he's done to how safe I consider him and how much money he has squeezed out of me throughout the relationship. The family holiday has just reignited my anger and disappointment. Just reading back everything I wrote, I know what I sound like. Alright, well, the community raised the red flags and apparently OP has seen him. So let's move on to the update that is 2 years after the original post. After the original post, I confronted him again about our finances. Instead of having a conversation, he got angry and accused me of calling him financially abusive, which I hadn't. Once he calmed down, he said he was going to move his kids back to their grandmother's house, which felt like an attempt to guilt trip me into silence. And for a while, it worked. I backed down because I could see he wasn't willing to listen, but willing to uproot his kids. He was convinced he wasn't earning that much more than me because he pays child support, but the truth was even with child support taken off, he was still the higher earner at a 60-40 split. A few weeks ago, I became quite ill, and despite that, he still expected me to cook and clean for him. He justified it by saying that since he earns more than me, I should be handling the household work. That was the final straw. It resurfaced all my old feelings. So I reached out to the police for advice, explaining what had been going on. Unfortunately, instead of handling it discreetly, they showed up at my home and arrested him. The police later admitted they were wrong for escalating the situation, but he took it as an admission from the police that I was in the wrong for going to them in the first place. They were admitting they should have handled me discreetly and not arrested him. After he was released, he came home, packed his things, and told me he could never build a future with someone as warped as me. According to him, going to the police over what he considered a non-issue showed that I had problems and should be in therapy for painting nice guys like him as villains. And then he brought up my original post. I didn't know he knew about it. He's read everything, including all the comments critical of him, and dismissed them as groupthink before sneering at my post, which he says was loaded. That's when it truly hit me. He knew exactly how I felt. He understood my concerns and still chose to continue benefiting from an unfair financial situation that he insisted on keeping in place. I couldn't blame this mess on miscommunication. He knew all along. Now, my ex is in the process of moving out. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I can finally breathe and be honest with people around me. The support I've had has been overwhelming. I have so much gratitude. You guys were right. He was just using me while he saved his own money. He was never intending on letting me be a part of his future. He was only interested in me subsidizing his life while it lasted. So, that's it. He's out. Thank you all for the support and advice. Wow, OP, talk about a scumbag ex. But the good thing is, even after all this time, you're out of there and now you can focus on yourself. So here's wishing you the best in the future, OP. Thanks for sharing and take care. And now let's move on to the next post that also has an update. This post is from the subreddit amitheasshole and it's by user goldpalpitation8982. Am I the a-hole for refusing to change my baby's name even though it makes my husband's family uncomfortable? So I, 30 female, gave birth to my daughter 6 weeks ago, and my husband, 32 male, and I had already picked out her name months ago, Luna. We both loved it. It was beautiful to us because we had our first date on a night with a huge full moon, and it just felt right. Well, the moment we announced her name, my husband's family got weirdly quiet. I didn't think much of it at first, but later, His mom pulled me aside and I could tell something was off. Turns out, in his family's very specific religious beliefs, which I honestly never paid much attention to because they're not super strict about it, the moon is considered a symbol of deceit and bad luck. Apparently, naming a baby after it is like setting them up for a lifetime of misfortune. His grandmother was so distressed that she literally started crying when she found out, saying we were cursing our daughter. I told him that while I respect their beliefs, they are their beliefs. Luna is a beautiful name and we weren't going to change it. My husband was on my side at first, but now that he's seen how upset his family is, he's asking me to reconsider at least changing her legal name and just calling her Luna as a nickname. I think this is ridiculous. Our daughter is already named. She's had this name for over a month. Changing it now feels absurd. But now his family is openly calling me selfish, saying I should compromise for the sake of family peace. Am I the a-hole for refusing to change my daughter's name even though it upsets his family? Of course not, OP. That's a name that you and your husband had picked together. You weren't asking for opinions, you weren't tallying up votes as to who thinks the best name is, and your husband shouldn't be bending over to his family's will because they're upset about it. Like you said, those are their beliefs, and they shouldn't influence how you name your child. The only instance I may consider somebody else's opinion is if I, stupidly enough, pick a tragedy kind of name. But that's neither here nor there. No, OP, you're not the a-hole for refusing to change your daughter's name, and your husband should continue to back you up. And what do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's check out the community comments. Rye1 says, if your husband's family's very specific religious beliefs were so important to them, how did your husband manage to name his daughter something so obviously problematic? Something doesn't sound right here. Impossible6811 says, not the a-hole. My half-sister just named her newborn son the same name as my dad's, not her dad, Dog. Did I say anything? No. Why? Because it's not my baby. These people are choosing a weird time to be overly religious. Hard pass. Maybe with time, your daughter will earn a cute nickname for family to call her, but you have zero obligation to follow some weird naming rules that someone else's religion dictates. It's not your religion or even your husband's. Bookish Mama 76 says, not the a-hole. Changing her legal name but continuing to call her Luna defeats the whole purpose. It's the name you both picked and love. There is nothing selfish about it. Truthfully, it seems like you have a husband problem. Your in-laws are free to have their own opinion, but they need to keep it to themselves at this point. Your husband needs to stand up for you. Dynadog says, Luna is a Roman goddess. She shoots arrows into the sky to produce the stars. What religion is this family? Not the a-hole. Keep the name. It's lovely. And ThinkShip544 says, not the a-hole. I let my ex-in-laws bully me, with the help of my spineless, worthless ex, into giving my child a name I didn't want because it had to start with a certain letter. I regret it still. Expecting a name change after it's been officially given is a whole other level of a-holery. Them, not you. Well, the community agrees that OP is not the a-hole. So now let's move on to the update to see how this story ends. Since people keep asking about the religion, my husband's family follows a very niche sect of Independent Fundamental Baptists, IFB. They're not as strict as some, but certain members, especially his grandmother, hold specific beliefs about the moon. They have some fundamentalist interpretations of Isaiah 47:12-14 and Deuteronomy 4:19, which warns against celestial bodies being associated with deception, false gods, witchcraft, etc. About how you shouldn't worship celestial bodies. His grandmother in particular believes the moon is a symbol of instability and misfortune. My husband never took those beliefs that seriously growing up, so it wasn't something that crossed his mind when we picked the name. However, once his family reacted the way they did, he started second-guessing it. It's less about him believing it himself and more about not wanting to accept his family. I personally think it's ridiculous, which is why I'm not budging on changing her name. Well, OP, good for you for standing your ground, although I still think you need to talk to your husband and get him on your side. He needs to stand with you, yes or yes. So on that note, here's wishing you the best, OP. Thanks for sharing and take care. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I assume that you like these stories that I'm reading out. So here are a couple more that you might enjoy. And if you don't have any time to watch another story right now, save it for later. And also, don't forget to hit that subscribe